Good evening. I'd like to call to order the May 14th, 2019 council meeting. Have a roll call, please.
Councilmember Krupa. Councilmember Meyer.
Here.
Councilmember Percival.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Mayor Wright.
Here.
I'll move to excuse Councilmember Krupa. Second.
Thank you. And that passes 4-0. Okay, going on to City Attorney closed session report, please.
Mayor, the City Council did meet in closed session. There were 3 items on the regular agenda. The council dealt with item 4 and 6. That's the conference with legal counsel and also conference with real property negotiator. There was no reportable action with regard to either of those 2 items. Item 5, conference with with labor negotiator, was taken off calendar to come back at a future date when human resource manager indicates it's appropriate.
Thank you. Next, going on to City Council business. City Council business items are expected to be routine in nature. They may be acted upon by... Did I say something? Oh! Well, gee, let's open this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. And that invocation will be given by Mary Rydesdale, St. Lucie Interfaith Council. Geez.
Good evening, council members. O my God, unite the hearts of thy servants and reveal to them thy great purpose. May they follow thy commandments and abide in thy law. Help them, O God, in their endeavor, and grant them strength to serve thee. O God, leave them not to themselves, but guide their steps by the light of thy knowledge, and cheer their hearts by thy love. Verily, thou art their helper and their Lord.
Thank you.
Please place your hand over your heart as we pledge allegiance to the flag in remembrance of Memorial Day yesterday. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, now the City Attorney already gave his report. I know we were a little late coming back, but I didn't think I'd skip things because of it. So now we'll go to City Council business. Items are expected to be routine in nature. They may be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion. Any council member, staff members, or citizen may request removal of an item for discussion. Are there any members of the public that would like to pull a receiving file item from staff or City Council? Staff, City Council? May I have a motion?
14.
That's consent.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Seems to be a theme.
You're next.
Are there any? Okay. And so I need a motion.
I'll move to receive and file.
Second. Please vote. And that passes 4-0. Next is consent calendar items. Is there anybody that wishes to speak on any of those items?
Yes, items number 9 and 10.
Okay. And that is public?
Yes.
From the public? Okay. Any other items that council wishes to pull? 13. Pardon? 13. And 14?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion to approve items 11, 12, and 15.
So moved.
Second. Please vote. That passes 4-0. Item number 9.
Marianne Darwin would like to speak on actually item number 9 and 10.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. I have been recently going to the Planning Commission meetings. I'm the only one there, anyway. However, what I've seen in the last month or so that I've been going is that There's been money passed to the Planning Commission, or the person who sits up there now in place of Deanna's spot. I've watched it twice, where people have come in and talked about their business and then have handed him a check. I didn't know that we did business at 7 o'clock at night with no kind of, they didn't get a receipt or anything. So I'm a little concerned about that, that's going on. And of course, there's nobody there to see it or talk about it. It's just business as usual. Also, too, I do ask that Lori Van Arnsdale has been on this commission. She's been the mayor of Hemet. I just watched a video with her talking to Huell Hauser. I think that was close to about 19 years ago. It was talked about how they talked about downtown. They talked about what was happening. There was going to be major renovations going on. Did I miss something there? Because when did that happen? When have we had any renovations at all go on other than one man, Simon Shu, who has taken over downtown and ruined some of those buildings that we all know and has done no service to this town at all whatsoever? The Gibble hardware store still sits there with no roof and no floor and weeds growing inside and boarded up on the back. And here it is, a prominent corner of our town on State and Florida, and I think it is State and Florida, and it sits right there. And nothing has been done for 3 years. And he's able to just treat this town as if it's just his own backyard. And so I want to apply to be on the Planning Commission because I think that, you know what, we just keep recycling. And it really isn't doing us any justice at all for any fresh eyes to go out there and look at all. And so I did call Sarah today to ask for an application. I think that it would only be fair, instead of keep asking the same people year after year to be on the planning commission, why can't we open that up? Why can't other people be on it? Why do we have to keep recycling? I just don't understand. So I am planning on putting my application in because I understand that is also a problem, is that people just don't apply. So we just keep adding on and letting these people stay for 10 years. And so as being a resident, I want to be proactive. And so that's what I'm asking.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? And that was for item 9 and 10?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Right, we have to, need a motion to approve the 2 planning commission reappointments.
Move approval of items 9 and 10.
Do you have a second? I'll second. Please vote. Eddie?
Motion fails.
Okay.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve item number 10.
I'll second.
That item passed 4-0.
Yes, it did. Okay, moving on to item number 13.
You
Oh, wait.
also have item 9.
Oh, okay.
Is your preference to
Well,
defer
it's
that
failed,
item?
so we need to defer the item then.
Yes. Well, unless there's somebody who has an alternative motion, but if not, it would carry over to the next meeting.
And carry over to our next meeting then. Okay, now item number 13.
I have a presentation.
Good evening.
Sorry, I didn't get the phone. I didn't have time to talk to you about this ahead of time. Sorry. Now declaring the weeds a nuisance, did you just put all those APN numbers in there to be informational? Because I didn't check all those.
No, actually, historically, we attach the APMs as part of the record.
Part of your report.
Part of the report and the record as it relates to the resolution that we have before you. Those will be the properties that we notify as part of the abatement process.
My question, I guess, is to legal counsel is what responsibility do we have with having those APNs listed and not being able to check all those? I mean, I have no way to reference any of those unless I pull each one. So, I mean, I believe that we're just approving the policy, right?
Correct. You're
And-
just proving direction, and it would be the responsibility of the department and city staff to verify that those APNs are correct.
Okay. And then we have an ordinance that declares weeds to be a public nuisance. Is it necessary for us to bring this back every year? Is that part of the, it could be part of the checks and balance that we have set in place?
It is required that the council take action to declare them public nuisance every year.
Each year? Okay. That was my question.
And I do have two things to add to that. One new process that we'll be doing this year is our fire companies, our engine companies, have been assigned within their geographic area, those APNs. So they'll be actually going out and doing the physical inspection and assisting us. So I want to that's an important part. And also, I'll leave copies, our Don't Wait to Abate. We've been working and reaching out to all of our business parcel owners, and we've had a significant response in self-compliance. So I'm actually picking the phone up and talking to realtors in the area and business owners that it's far better if we can work together. You get in front of this and do this before we send the letters out. And we're having a very positive response with that. So I think we're trying different approaches to it, and the outcome is we got to get the hazard reduced.
At least we've had moisture longer, even though I guess that makes for bigger weeds, right?
The grass growth is significant, and we're going to have a real problem here in a couple months. So try to get ahead of it.
And I know the grass is a fire hazard. However, on the plus side, it keeps the dust down.
Yes. Did that answer your question? Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other comments from council? That I'll need a motion.
I'll move to approve.
Adopt resolution bill number 19.
I'll move approval of 13.
Second.
And that passes 4-0. Next, item number 14, recommendation by fire.
Yes, thank you, Chief. I just wondered if you could give us a little overview of the history of this agenda item and expenditure.
Most certainly, Mayor Pro Tem. Before the council this evening is a request for appropriation from our ambulance penalty fee account. Those monies are collected on a yearly basis, and it's part of our contractual arrangement with REMSA, the Riverside Emergency Medical Services Authority. And I do want to point out a bit of a technical, the letters got transposed. The proper term is REMSA, R-E-M-S-A, Riverside Emergency Medical Services Authority, not R-E-S-M-A. I'm left-handed, I'm guilty. So we failed to catch that in the typo. But again, the intent is those monies are distributed on a yearly basis. We worked with our finance team. I think 2 years ago we established a dedicated account under our contractual agreement with the county. Those late fees are to be encumbered and used specifically by fire for purposes of EMS enhancements. In this particular case, we're asking for an increment from that account, and we're actually going to be, it doesn't show on the actual, what's before you on the item, 2 items we're requesting that funding for. Number one is we're, as you know, working very closely with the police department to enhance our communication system, and part of that allotment will be towards the RFP with Pegasus Telecommunications Consulting Group. The PD is handling the RFP and all that process, and we're paying an allotment towards that. It's $24,000 total, and we'll be taking part of that $25,012 towards that. The balance will be to purchase additional EMS supplies and equipment as we move forward to outfit our peak demand unit with the new unit we just purchased that you approved. And again, in both cases, those are non-general fund monies, and we benefit directly from that, and it allows us to build up, in this case, and the items that I just mentioned to you will be brought forth accordingly.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Any other questions by council? With that,
I
I need
move
a motion.
approval of item 14.
Second.
Please vote. That passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Next item, communications from the public. Anyone who wishes to address the council should have submitted a request to speak form to the city clerk. You're limited to 3 minutes in consideration of others and the agenda items. As you know, state law prohibits the city council from discussing any item not on the agenda except for brief responses for statements made or questions posed by the public. In addition, we may ask a question for clarification, provide a reference to staff or other resources for factual information, or if necessary, request staff to report back at a subsequent meeting. Sarah, do we have anybody wishing to speak?
Yes, Pat Gregory.
Good evening. I have just 3 questions this evening because after looking at all the information that I could find, I couldn't find the answer, so I would appreciate either an answer or a reference to where I could find out this information. First question I have is how many sworn police officers and firemen have actually been hired with Measure U funds? I believe the terminology is boots on the ground. I'd like to know the exact number of the new boots on the ground as of this date, because I believe the Measure U revenues are somewhere around 17 million or something. I couldn't be accurate on that. First question. Second question. According to the audit, the general fund balance was 12.8 million in 2017 before approximately Measure U. Last 2 years have seen deficit spending in the millions, so it seems to me that Hemet may already be in danger of going into their 20% reserve funds. What I'd like to know is the exact status of the general fund budget, of the general fund without Measure U, because I would like to know if it's below the 20%. Third question, looking at the quarterly budget update, the police and fire expect to spend the entire 10 million that they were projected to receive in the tax. So my question is, what happened to the reserve? Or maybe I'm reading the numbers wrong, but I thought there was going to be about $4 million left for the end of the 10-year period. But according to the quarterly update, they're going to spend the whole 10 million. I would just like to know. May I direct these questions to the city manager by email? Because I know he can't. Okay, those are the questions that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, there's no other speakers at this time. We'll go on to public hearing. Item number 16, zoning ordinance amendment and the minor text revisions. And we have principal planner.
Yeah, for those of you that do not know, this is HP. HP's been taking the bulk of the planning responsibilities in the Community Development Department. And so we have our interim individual Community Development Director. So HP, I wanted to thank you for your help in getting us through this transition. We really do appreciate it, so thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, HP.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Before you tonight is a zoning ordinance amendment 19-001. Just brief background is that staff periodically process a cleanup ZOA to correct errors, inconsistencies, omissions, or ambiguous sections. These corrections do not substantially alter the existing land use, policy, or development processing procedures. Planning Commission reviewed this request on May 21st, 2019, and recommended adoption of the ordinance. The areas for amendment is the administrative adjustment application, accessory building in A, agriculture, and R1 zone, permitted uses in the commercial zone, typographical errors for signage requirements. The administration adjustment application on March 5th, 2019 Planning Commission meeting. the Planning Commission directed staff to process a ZOA that would enable a community development director to address minor fencing variances. Staff reviewed minor variance applications in other cities and is proposing increasing the listed development standards subject to an administrative adjustment application. The development standards in administrative adjustment that we're going to request is a maximum increase of 20% in allowable height of building or structure, a maximum decrease of 20% in required setbacks or distances between structures, a maximum decrease of 10% in lot coverage or floor area ratio, a maximum adjustment of 5% in parking space and parking lot requirements. Development standards in administrative adjustment, an adjustment for required on-site landscaping and fencing standards, including height, material, and setback encroachment, allowing accessory structures to exceed 50% of the square footage of the principal structure in the Ag Zone and R1 single-family residential zones on lots of 1 acre or more. So these findings are in the accessory structure and not in the administrative adjustments. The findings for the administrative adjustment is that it has to have these criteria, which is unique physical circumstances that are not similar to other parcels in the zone, that strict application of the zoning standards deprive the property of the right to use the land in a manner enjoyed by other properties in the zone, and approval of the administrative adjustment does not constitute a grant of special privilege. So the accessory buildings larger than 50% of primary structure in the Ag Zone is approved by Community Development Director. No process stated, and ZOA requires an administrative adjustment application. In the R1 zone, however, lots 1 acre or more, it has to be approved by the Planning Commission, and no process stated, and ZOA requires an administrative adjustment application in that as well. Within the permitted uses C zone, within the C2 zone, laundromat was left out by error, so we're asking that laundromat be placed back into the C2 zone. The zoning ordinance amendment formalizes allowing the manufacture, assembly, display, and sales of modular homes in the CM zone only, not in the C1 or C2, but in the CM zone only. And in the signage, the number has some errors in that it identifies the number as under 30,000 square feet. So it has a little difficulty in reading, so we're changing that to under 29,999 and less. And then from 30,000 to 69,000, we need to up it to 69,999. So it's just a typographical error that we're making. And there's a section in the banner signage reference area that it references to item E, C2E, but rather it needs to be referenced to C2D. So we're making those corrections. So in conclusion, ZOA 19-001 helps ensure that city zoning ordinance is accurate, orderly, and consistent with the general plan. So the Planning Commission recommends that the City Council introduce, read by title only, and waive further reading of Ordinance Bill number 19-027, approving ZOA 19-001 as recommended by Planning Commission, and based on the findings outlined, and direct staff to file notice of exemption with the county clerk. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, with that, I will open the public hearing. Sarah, is there anybody that wishes to speak on this item?
No.
Okay, that's it. Are there any council members that wish to have comments?
I need to have some comments.
It would be inconsistent for me not to comment. I'm sorry, but I know that this is silly, but some of these, like when we're rewording, I just hope that we didn't pay a lot of money to have this reworded, because 2 + 2 = 4, 3 + 1 = 4, and if you know what I'm saying? Under $29.99 is this, $29.99 and less is the same as under 30. Like, there's a lot of things like that in here. You understand what I'm saying? And so, okay, But the other question I had is like on 2.2, and maybe this is the way we do things here, subject to approval of an administrative adjustment permit by the community development director. So there's a property in town that has a business on it, and the neighbor decides to do something and build a fence that is not part of our general plan, but gets special permission from the community development director, then the neighbors that had to stick with the plan have to get over it. Is that what this says?
No, this actually came about on a property that was wider than deep. So when they originally developed a fence in the front yard, we considered it as a front yard. But however, because the property was so wide, half the portion of the property needed to be function more like a rear yard. So it's not, they don't have any more backyard. So it gave the community development director some flexibility in making those calls without bringing it back to planning commission. So it was for those.
They could bring it back, like if the owners wanted to
Correct.
make it whatever their issues are.
Correct.
Okay, and so, all right, and I think, let's see, that is, and that's just for residential,
Correct.
agricultural zones, okay. And then also the maximum increase and the decrease of the structure size, that was all approved, you said, by
Correct.
the planning commission.
Correct.
So, all right, thank you, that's the questions that I had.
Just a question on the increases in sizes. Are those to maintain consistency with new state law with regards to accessory dwelling units?
Yes, it is.
And I still need to close that public hearing. I'll do that before we go on. Russ, did you have anything to add?
Just an overall question. Do you envision that any of these adjustments are going to somewhat streamline and expedite the approval process?
Yes. These are minor stuff. So when you're talking about 20%, we're talking about maybe 6 feet of adjustment. It's not a lot of adjustments, but it's enough where we can get some of the smaller projects going without going through the planning commission process.
Thank you. Can we make sure that if we're approving an accessory dwelling unit on a property, that when it's filed and it goes back to the county assessor for some sort of a reassessment, because they're going to reassess it, that it still maintains, especially if it's in like an R1 or an RR or an ag zone, that it still maintains its single-family residence and it doesn't change to a multifamily?
Sure.
Especially when that ADU has all its utilities pulled from the main unit, so they're not on separate utilities. So it's essentially still become or stay as one unit, if you will. If we can make sure of that, because I've run into situations where it's wreaked havoc on a property owner.
Sure.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to mention that I really appreciate the red line version. Made it really easy to be able to see immediately a snapshot what those changes were, and so thank you for that. With that,
I didn't see mine until after, I didn't flip that far. I asked them to email it, so, thank you.
with that, can I have a motion to approve this item?
I will move to approve staff's recommendations for the zoning ordinance and to be read by title only.
Do you have a second? Okay, please vote. And Sarah, if you'll read ordinance title, please.
Ordinance Bill Number 19-027, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Hemet amending various sections of Chapter 90 zoning of the Hemet Municipal Code to correct minor text errors, clarify allowable uses, and expand the applicability for administrative use permits.
Okay, that's 4-0. Okay. Going on to discussion action items. Number 17, quarterly budget update as of March 30th, 2019.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present the third quarter's financial update. So as of March 31st, 2019. For the general fund, the non-Measure U revenues are on track for this time of year at just under 62%. Property tax collections are at 55% with the second large payment due in late May. I did notice we already received the remittance advice, so that large payment should be here any day. Sales tax collections are at just under 63%, keeping in mind this is normal because the months of July and August we're still receiving payments that we accrue back. So 2 estimated payments and 1 true-up payment. Transient occupancy tax collections are at 50%. Sales tax collections are slightly higher than a year ago, and this is mainly due to the state's new software. There were several payments that were delayed last year in coming in. Most of them have come in. There are still delays. HDL keeps us pretty well informed on those, but there are still delays. We are still trending higher than last year. The non-Measure U expenditures are on track for the year at 73%. So a few things to keep in mind. On the attachments to the staff report, you'll notice that expenditure budget exceeds revenue budget. This is mainly due to 3 line items that are in there. One is a PEG project for $600,000. All of the PEG fees that we collect have to be reserved to be used only for PEG projects. So PEG is for the public channel for council meetings, so the recordings and transmitting of the meetings. Those funds are only to be used to improve whether it's cameras or the council chambers to be able to broadcast our meetings. That money can't be used for the ongoing maintenance of that, only for the capital improvements of it. So we have well over $1 million. There is a project on the books for $600,000. We're still waiting on, I believe it's an RFP that's in process to get that one started. So that one doesn't come out of, that wouldn't be considered part of a deficit because it's not included in that. There are 3 projects that the fire department has brought forward throughout this year, totaling $125,500 that are all coming out of the ambulance penalty fees that Chief spoke of earlier. That money also is set aside to be used only for projects that are specific to or emergency services. So that doesn't touch the 20% or the fund balance. And then the third piece of it is the $295,000 that was a mid-year budget adjustment for the public safety MOUs. That would affect the general fund balance, so that would be considered a deficit. As a whole, the general fund expenditures are at 73%. When we look at that 73%, that already takes into account the $1 million in vacancy savings that we were required as part of the budget process. So even with that, we're still 2% below, and that's about $800,000. If we stay on track with that, which it's looking like we are, we should be okay. On the Measure U side, revenues are also on track. They're at just under 63%, same as the non-Measure U side. Measure U expenditures are just below 51%. Expenditures for the same quarter last year were 41% of the budget. Measure U activity is reported separately from the non-Measure U general fund, so we don't commingle because of the resolution. Their fund balance is kept separate, their expenditures are kept separate, their revenues are tracked separate as well. On the non-general fund departments, revenues do continue to outpace expenditures in most funds. And I do have 2 corrections to my staff report. I apologize, I picked up the wrong number. On the water fund, I stated in my staff report that the water fund had spent 67% of its budget. That's how much we had left. We've only spent 33% of the budget. There are several projects that are included in this budget that are still in the early stages, and others that are still in planning stages. Same thing happened with the revenue side, as I picked up what we have left, not what we've collected. So we've collected 57%, not 42.2%. And revenues are slightly higher than the same quarter last year. So with that, I can answer any questions.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak on this item? No.
Nobody's turned in any slips. Okay. It looks like you have somebody from the audience trying to get your attention.
Is this a question you've already asked?
No, it's not, Mayor. Sorry. I get very confused when I listen to what's being said. I get very confused between what the numbers that I see and the information up here. Because isn't the water department going to spend $7 million more than it took in? That's what it says. You have expenditures of $17 million and revenues of $10 million.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, well, that's kind of a biggie, and I didn't see that up there. And the general fund, I've already asked that question, so I won't go over that. But that's my question about the water. It's going to lose $7 million that wasn't presented. Thank you.
Yes, the water fund has several projects that have carried over for a few years. They're somewhere between $9 and $10 million. So when you look at the expenditures being $17 million and revenues only being around $10 million, it's mainly due to rollover budgets, continuations of projects that have not been completed. There is fund balance available to complete those projects.
So it doesn't have a general fund impact?
No general fund impact.
Thank you. Council, does council have any questions this time?
I just have one question for you. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot.
Oh, no.
Thanks for the update on where we're at for the quarter. But can you give us a specific update on the revenue to date that the city has received on parolees and homeless that are brought to Hemet?
I cannot.
Okay, thank you.
And you cannot because?
Because we get nothing
Thank you.
that says.
And it was kind of a trick question because I already knew that answer, but I wanted you to say that for the record. So thank you very much.
Are there any other questions for Lorena?
I just have a comment on that. The plan is to have related to the budget, fiscal year 19-20 proposed preliminary budget at the next council meeting. So Lorena and the team are working very diligently to get that before you at the next council meeting.
Okay, with that, I need a motion. To receive and file the budget update.
Second.
Please vote. And that motion carries 4-0.
Thank you, council.
Thank you. Next item is number 18, support balanced energy solutions. Interim City Manager Lopez.
Yes, so this item before you right now is a request from SoCalGas to have the council take a position and adopt the resolution that's attached. I'll go ahead and go over the staff report. A number of state agencies are increasingly proposing new legislation and regulations looking to eliminate energy choices and mandating solutions to fully electrify homes and businesses in the future. Part of the goals around electrification include a complete reduction of greenhouse gas emissions for new buildings, new building codes aimed at reducing emissions, and a movement towards renewable and clean energy. This resolution does not take a position against electrification. It does emphasize the desire of the City Council to allow for customer choice. It is important to recognize that full electrification may be more costly for some residents, particularly the most financially vulnerable within a community, including those that are on fixed incomes, elderly, working families, etc. One of the additional benefits of maintaining a balanced energy solution is to allow alternative sources to be developed and available in case of electrical grid failure. The state's focus on electrical energy delivery discourages investment in alternative energy sources. Many utility agencies are promoting greenhouse gas reductions by the actions that they have taken. These energy alternatives come from sources such as green waste, wastewater treatment, food waste, and agricultural waste. By capturing methane throughout the aforementioned sources, which would normally go into the atmosphere, agencies are capturing this and placing it into their pipelines for customer use. By supporting the recommended resolution, the City Council is making a statement to protect customer choice and taking a position on maintaining local control. So alternatives for the council, if they choose, as the choices that they have, include adopting the resolution as it's presented in the staff report, in the agenda backup, or receive and file this report. So with that being said, Mayor, open it up as you wish for discussion and direction on this item.
Okay, are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Hearing none. I see that Raymond Lane is here in the audience. Perhaps he'd like to speak with regards to this item.
I do want to also mention that a number of neighboring agencies, maybe Mr. Lane can talk about the agencies that have adopted this resolution, so the council has a background on this item.
I am here to answer questions, but as the city manager had stated, there are multiple cities that are adopting this. As you have read the resolution, it is a resolution that is simply a resolution of support of all options, not eliminating choice from residents or from this council in the direction that you would like to go. As we saw, and I came and spoke, some of the bills that were in the legislature last year pushed for electrification of homes and businesses throughout California, and not just new construction, but requiring your residents to go back and retrofit with no subsidy their own homes and their own businesses to 100% electrical. Obviously, we believe that there should be options when you're trying to meet the state-mandated reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. We do not believe that anything should be taken off the table, and that there should be a wide choice in allowing cities to make that decision, either individually for the businesses or the city council to be able to make a decision on what direction you choose to go in order to meet the state mandates. But that is all I have, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions you may have.
Don't go anywhere.
Does staff or does council have any questions for either staff or Mr. Lane?
I don't have any questions for staff, but I do have a question for Mr. Lane. You had touched on that this is to kind of give some pushback on the state mandates that are coming down that will be 100% electrification, will take away choice for homeowners with no subsidy to repay it, and will drive cost up.
Yes, sir.
Is that how I'm hearing this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from?
Yeah, I have a question. I just don't understand how they think they can come and take away my gas. I have a gas stove, I have a lot of gas in my house, and how do they think they can just do that? I know it's a big question, but
it's a very broad question. I'm surprised that
that's
the
just
state.
crazy.
Well, look, the state has mandated from Governor Jerry Brown before he left greenhouse gas emission reduction throughout the state of California, and they're very aggressive. There are some goals to be below 1990 levels, within a period of time. Part of their idea is to eliminate and go to 100% electrification. SoCal Gas is a supporter of electricity. I tell people all the time, you would probably be surprised that SoCalGas's largest customer is Southern California Edison. They use natural gas to fire their plants. We are very supportive of electricity. The resolution is not anti-anything. It is basically saying that we should maintain every option. The state of California believes, or based on the decision that they have made in the past, believe that they would like to go in the all electrification one day down the road. And so what that would mean in the discussions we've heard at the state level is that they would just basically eliminate your gas stove, for instance. And so when your gas stove went out and you went to go purchase a new gas stove at Home Depot or Lowe's, they would no longer have them and you would have to move to an electric stove. So again, we are not anti. We support Southern California Edison. We just believe that City Council should have the decision in the direction they make for their residents. And the average cost to electrify a home is somewhere between $7,000 and $8,000 per home to retrofit. The governor is also talking about building 3.5 million homes in the next 7 years. It's roughly 500,000 homes per year. Adding all electric to new construction increases the cost of homes to be built in California. So we believe that there should be a wide variety of choices for city councils to choose the direction they want to go, for homeowners if they want to go in that direction. The interesting thing is that if someone wants to go all electric right now, they have that ability. You have some homes in your city that are all electric, and there's nothing stopping a resident from doing that. We just think that mandating only one choice for energy is a bad choice.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have two alternatives here. Number one, adopt the resolution, or number two, receive and file this report. So do I have a motion from council for number one or number two?
I'd like to just make a brief comment.
Absolutely.
Before we get to that point. This council has already taken a position to be a participating agency in the WCE board, and that even though it's dealing with electricity, it's a consortium of agencies seeking to find alternative sources, hopefully at cost savings to the consumer. So, from my standpoint, I think we've already taken a step in the direction of providing a broader range of choices on one energy source. So I just wanted to make that comment.
I want to make one comment before I make a motion.
Sure.
But I do want to make a comment about one of the things that Mr. Lane mentioned about housing and the governor's push for housing and the state legislature's push for affordable housing. As a realtor, I can tell you that for affordable housing, the consumer has to have choice. And if the state continues to push for reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, whatever side of the fence you're on with relation to that, I'm on a committee that deals with the California Coastal Commission. Doesn't really affect us here in Hemet as much because we're farther off the coast. However, they're coming out with a new draft document that will be draft regulations for cities, especially coastal cities, that deal with what they call sea level rise. However, I've read through some of these draft documents, the first draft, the second draft, and there's no mention in the actual language of the draft regulations that deal with sea level rise. It only deals with coastal erosion. Well, if you're on the coast, what erodes the coast is not the rise of the sea, but tidal action. So with that, I mean, from a realtor standpoint, we still need to have choice because, as you mentioned, Edison's your biggest customer, and if we cut the gas lines from them, what's going to happen to the cost of electricity? It's just going to go through the roof. So I think it looks like
make a motion.
Yeah, there's some other people that would like to speak.
We have one person who has to speak, Debbie Binion.
Good evening. I am Debbie Venna. I just wanted to add some information that
they'll give you something else to think about that's not generally discussed. I have been supporting hydrogen fusion for many years now. Hydrogen fusion is a real simple technology, but it's a political issue because it's a sustainable energy. Basically, hydrogen fusion is created by desalinating water under pressure with an electrified water source. You can generate electricity from that cleanly, and my broker is a civil engineer who's actually at a meeting right now with a general manager from the Salton Sea Authority, and there is a lot of writing that I've written. Governor Brown's gotten this over the past couple of years and things like that. The water infrastructure in California can be addressed by this if they do this off of the coast of San Diego up in the old San Onofre area. There's a power grid there they can plug right into and generate the electricity at source, put it back into the grid there. They can also pipe desalinated water inland. That water can go to serve Los Angeles. Los Angeles currently is looking to take water from the desert in the Cadiz project. So the Salton Sea is a huge concern for us. They're actually the air quality issues. Right now, they're measuring the toxic dust coming up to the Ventura County. We're breathing that. The kids right around the Salton Sea are getting very sick with asthma. That all comes our way. So Los Angeles, everybody has forgotten that that whole city is from a project that diverted the Colorado River. That affects 7 states. It also affects international politics because right now everybody knows the border stuff. I won't get into all of that. You know, I'm a human trafficking advocate issue on those things. But there's also the maquiladores, which is a byproduct from NAFTA. And we sent a lot of manufacturing down there, created a lot of jobs that are not covered or protected by what we have in our backyard, which is the EPA. Those manufacturing jobs down there create products that put toxins in the environment that gets dumped into the New River. That New River flows back across our border into America, goes into the Salton Sea, and it's been poisoning fish and birds. We've had massive die-offs already this year. It all blows our way. My grandparents migrated to California because of the Dust Bowl created by World War I with the Wall Street. Is it okay to continue?
No, the news is up. Thank you.
Okay, so it's just another alternative. It's not often discussed.
Thank you. So, did you want to make a motion?
Let me see what we got here. I will move that we adopt the resolution giving our consumers choice.
I'll second that.
Et cetera.
Please vote. And that passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda, number 19, Library Facilities Use Agreement with Hemet Unified School District. Senior Librarian, Kathy Gaines.
Actually, let me provide some commentary on
sure,
this to
great.
begin with. So based on the last council meeting on May 14th, the City Council reviewed a proposed agreement between the city and the Hemet Unified School District. At that meeting, we discussed the time that was spent on the city side as well as Hemet Unified side to try and get a document that was more in line with what the city was typically accustomed to agreeing to. We couldn't come to an agreement in that time, so what we presented to the City Council was essentially the agreement as the school district intended the city to agree to. The City Council obviously had some input on that item. Based on that meeting, the items that the City Council directed the staff and the city attorney to develop was a new agreement that had the following items. Provided the Hemet Unified School District with the use of certain facilities and reserved the same for the district's exclusive use during specified dates and times. Take reasonable measures to keep and maintain the necessary facilities one reserved for the Hemet Unified School District in compliance with applicable USDA health, safety, and sanitation guidelines regarding the distribution of meals under the program, and ensure the setup and removal of tables and chairs for the Hemet Unified School District to serve meals in accordance with the attached agreement. Based on the direction that we received from the City Council, we did have some conversations with Hemet Unified. We couldn't get to the final place as it relates to that agreement. So what we are asking for in the staff report is that we have more time for me and the attorney's office to finalize that agreement and then execute it on behalf of the city based on a meeting that we are scheduled to have tomorrow afternoon with the attorney's office, Hemet Unified, as well as city management. So that is what we are asking for tonight.
Okay. Are there any members of the public that wish to speak on this item? Hearing none. About members of the council.
So you want us to just approve in general what this is, and then you guys will, is that what you're asking us to do?
Correct.
You guys are going to finalize it tomorrow?
Correct. The council had requested that we bring back the agreement. We couldn't do that in the time that we had. I think the last discussion was Thursday evening, and the agenda was posted the next day, and I understand, obviously with the holiday yesterday, we didn't have a chance to sit down and hammer those things out.
I'm just going to be frank about this. The problem is that the first time is that we expected it to be, you know what I'm saying? Because we're not all here as attorneys. And so it makes me nervous to approve it without seeing it. I'll just be honest. There's one on here, meals should be dispensed quickly and served at appropriate temperatures. And dispensed is not defined. And so the more we leave open-ended terms, the more problems that we end up coming up against. And so we need to be as thorough as possible.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I think initially, council was surprised by the liability issues that would be placed on us when it's a school-supported event, which we're in full support of this particular item because we have to take care of the kids. This is for the kids, and we've done it for several years. However, you brought up some really good points last meeting with regards to, and our discussion with regards to the liability. The superintendent has asked to be a part of those meetings. I don't think she was part of the discussion before. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was worked between the attorney's office, the library staff, and I think one of her subordinates.
And so the idea is that she wishes to be at the table so that collectively these items can be ironed out, and the city manager asking for our approval to he knows where we stand, the attorney knows where we stand, based on the fact that this is supposed to start next week. Kathy?
Yes, we can postpone until the following week when our activities start, but our hope would, yeah.
And I don't have a problem with it. It's just they knew where we stood, last week too, and 2 weeks before that, and 2 weeks before that. So it's not like we beat around the bush.
And again, the superintendent was not part of those discussions, and she wishes to be a part of those discussions because she's the ultimate person who makes those decisions of changes and can approve those changes. So, do you have anything else to add, Kathy?
No.
Okay.
Just we want to feed the children.
Yeah, the other thing that I would ask, just to legal, if there's anything else that they need in terms of additional criteria by which to help finalize this and get it to the finish line.
No, just direction and from the negotiations. With regard to the word dispense in section 2F, all of those obligations of the district were taken from the district's materials that were based on their grant fund. So we're happy to change those in any way. I didn't change that. I think your point's well taken because that had come out of their materials and that's how they framed their obligation. But we can dig into those weeds a little more if you'd like us to.
I just want you to protect us like you would protect it if it was your kitchen.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And I think that was what the attorney's office was doing. However, the challenge was that